Good morning again. Thank you very much for attending again the first summit on statelessness in Canada. The first panel obviously was informative and engaging. I would like now to introduce the second panel of the day, which you can see on the screen behind me, is people and lives and the issues behind them. Let me start by saying that statelessness in the Canadian context cannot be discussed without hearing from those who are personally affected by statelessness itself. This forthcoming panel will bring together the insights from those experiencing statelessness and those who work alongside those who are tirelessly working to assist those who are or are at risk of being stateless, both in a legal and a mobilization capacity, so grassroots and also kind of councils and lawyers. The chair of this panel is a great friend of mine and a good community activist right here in the nation's capital. Ms. Maria Basualdo has extensive experience in community-based research, using participatory methodologies and forming partnerships with community partners, faculty members, and student researchers. Maria has been involved with community development strategies that supported activities to engage and reconnect people, contribute to environmental sustainability, socioeconomic development, and cultural revitalization, and exploring also alternative livelihoods. Please join me in giving a warm, welcoming round of applause to our presenters and chair, Dr. Stacey Douglas, Mr. Donovan McLaughlin, Mr. Kia Gunster, Ms. Michelle Quigg, and Mr. Hughes Lonley.
Thanks so much, everyone. First thing that I want to do, I want to acknowledge that we are at the unceded working territory. Thanks so much, Jacob, for reminding me that. I'm so thrilled to be part of this panel and to be able to share personal experiences with the panelists that are sitting with us here. I really want to, I'm sorry, I have to take my glasses on and off to be able to see. The goal of this panel is to put a face to statelessness, learn and share with those affected by statelessness, to share personal experiences people will need to feel safe and comfortable sharing. So I'm just asking to everybody to be mindful of that and be respectful in the way that we are going to address and ask questions, because we are sharing here very personal stories. I'm part of this summit, and I'm glad to be part of this summit as an Ontario Public Interest Research Group representative. We have worked really closely with the action group Justice for Deepen, that is related to Deepen Burakari, and we have Stacey Douglas here as a part of that action group. And that has been the main engine for OPERC to be involved in the process of organizing this first big conversation about statelessness. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce everybody in the panel. We'll speak in the same order we are sitting here. We'll have 20 minutes around there to talk about and another 20 minutes for questions. I'll keep track on time and I'll make signs and for everybody to come when we need to. So our first panelist is Dr. Stacey Douglas. As I said before, she's a member of the action group Justice for Deepen. She's also an assistant professor in the Department of Law and Legal Studies at Carleton University. Her interest in law and legal studies is fueled by broad questions about theories of democracy, the role of state, the relationship between government and governed, and processes of decolonization. She approaches these areas through empirical research as well as political and legal theory, especially that which intersects with post-structural feminist, queer, and critical race traditions. I'm also going to introduce Mr. Deepen Burakari. Even when he's not able to be here in person, we have a voice recorder file that we will play for everybody. Deepan is an Ottawa-born man who the Canadian government is trying to deport to India, a country where he has no family, has never lived, and is not a citizen. He was born in Canada, in Ottawa specifically, which is now, he had an Ontario birth certificate, he held a Canadian passport, and before that, he was on his mother Canadian passport for 5 years. In his passport, it says that his nationality is Canadian, and the same is for his family. Mr. Donovan McLaughlin, a former stateless person and now a Canadian citizen, doesn't know exactly where or when he was born, only that it was sometime around January 19th, 1954, between Rosewood, South Dakota, and Guelph, Ontario. Here in the residential school system, his mother and First Nation father chose not to register his birth and homeschooled him. After 61 years as a stateless person, Mr. McLaughlin became a Canadian citizen on May 21, 2015. Mr. Kia Gangster, a stateless person, was born 20 years ago at home in Tucson, Arizona. His birth was never registered. While still an infant, his mother crossed the border into Canada with no identification or American records to confirm his place of birth. Without those records, he has not been able to obtain either Canadian or American citizenship and has no identity documents. Ms. Michelle P. is a lawyer and program coordinator at the Access Pro Bono Society of BC. Her law practice focuses on citizenship, immigration, and refugee law. She represents both Kia Gangster and Donovan McLaughlin. Mr. Hugh Langlais presides over his firm with office in Canada, China, Lebanon, and Senegal. He practices family and business immigration law. Since October 2008, he has acted as inspector and special investigator for the Quebec Bar to oversee the professional work of immigration colleagues. Mr. Langlais is a regular contributor to the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation as an immigration legal expert. He is the chairman of Immigration and Citizenship Committee and an approved trainer of the Quebec Bar. So we'll start with Stacy.
Great. Thanks so much, Maria, and thanks to all the organizers of this great conference for bringing all of you wonderful people and you wonderful people here together to talk about this really important issue. As Maria mentioned, my name is Stacey Douglas, and I am a professor at Carleton, but also a member of the Justice for DPAN Support Committee. And unfortunately, DPAN could not be here in person today, although we are lucky enough with great efforts by Maria to have an audio file from DPAN that we're going to hear in a few minutes. But I'm going to give you some context and introduction to who DPAN Boudlakati is. Unfortunately, because it is me up here talking, I'm going to be talking in some ways in a much more disconnected way about the case, talking a little bit about the facts and what's kind of happening in the legal case. But when we do hear from DPAN, you'll get to hear some of the more personal trials and tribulations he's, of course, going through and experiencing at the hand of the state. Deepan Boudlakati was born in Ottawa in 1989, Ottawa Grace Hospital. He grew up in Ottawa, lived in Ottawa, and he was born to two parents who, his parents were born in India, but they'd come to Canada to work for the Indian High Commission. They were cleaning staff for the diplomat. And so this is important information for the context of Deepan's case. But I'll tell you a little bit more about Deepan's life, and I'll tell you about the legal questions surrounding his birth. So after 1989, Deepan lived in Ottawa, had a kind of what we call a rough childhood, didn't have a great relationship with his family, was in and out of kind of various kinds of trouble, including run-ins with Children's Aid, and leading to, later on in his life, some run-ins with criminal law. Deepan was serving a sentence in 2010 for there's a series of series of charges, which I can go into more detail later, but that's not really the important thing here. He was at the time serving a sentence when he was asked by a prison guard at the Ottawa Carleton Detention Center if he indeed was a citizen. Deepan replied yes, thinking it was quite a strange question to be asked and quite a strange experience having been singled out by a prison guard who he did not necessarily know. And about a week later, the CBSA, Canadian Border Services Agency, showed up to interview Deepan about his citizenship and his birth. A few months later, this is still in 2010, the government informed Deepan that he, in fact, was not a Canadian citizen, that the birth certificate he'd been given in 1989, as well as the 2 passports Deepan has held in his life, were issued in error, and that they were revoking his citizenship, or again, that they had issued it in error, and that he should be deported to India. They believe the state believes that India is where Deepan's citizenship lies. Once Deepan was finished carrying out his criminal sentence, he was immediately picked up and transferred to the Toronto West Detention Centre, where he was then held as an inadmissible person on immigration grounds, and given a deportation order to India, a place he's never lived. He has no family. His parents live here in Nepean. His brother lives here in Nepean, and he does not speak the language, has no cultural connection or legal connection. In fact, in 2013, India said Deepan is definitely not a citizen of India, and the Indian High Commissioner, I'll stop that thought. So what this all turns on, how this all happened, according to the state, is that there's a little section in our Citizenship Act, Section 3, subsection 2, which says that children who are born to diplomatic staff are not citizens. They're not given citizenship status. And the government alleges that at the time of his birth in 1989, in the fall of 1989, that Deepan's parents were cleaning staff for the diplomat, and so Deepan is not a citizen. So there are 2 things to say about this situation. One is the kind of technical issue. While the government asserts that Deepan's parents were working for the Indian High Commission, the Indian High Commission and Deepan's parents both claim they were not. They claim that his parents had stopped working for the embassy in the summer, and that they had no diplomatic status. And one of the pieces of evidence, in addition to the affidavit that the Indian High Commissioner has written on behalf of Deepan's parents claiming this, the other evidence to help prove their case is that Deepan's birth in the fall of 1989 was not paid for by the Indian High Commission, which, if he was a child of diplomatic staff, that's what would have happened. So there's some kind of technical, questions about who was working when, where, that seem, according to the government and according to one of the judges in the federal court case, seems sketchy. Well, that's what the government alleges. It seems quite clear on our end of things that they finished working in the summer. People have sworn affidavits saying as much. But the other thing that is, of course, conjured up in this situation, in this context, is not just about the technical details of that fall 1989, but is the government's action 20 years after the fact to tell someone who's been living in Canada, for all intents and purposes, believing they're a Canadian citizen, having a social insurance number, accessing health care, living their life as a regular Canadian, to then have their citizenship stripped. So something that I argue in some of the things I've written about this case is that, technical issue or not, this is a disproportionate form of punishment to an error that was made in 1989. Now, a little bit about the legal situation. Deepan has fought, he's taken a case, started at the federal court. In 2014, the federal court dismissed the case, citing, again, the sketchy details of fall 1989 and essentially deferring the decision, saying that Deepan and his legal team had not exhausted all of their avenues for remedy to the situation. The other avenue that the court wants DPAN to pursue is to apply to the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration for a declaration of citizenship. This is something that you can do. It exists in our Canadian law, citizenship law, and this declaration would be made on the grounds of compassionate and humanitarian grounds. And so that was the decision of the federal court. DPAN appealed. The federal court of appeal dismissed the case as well on similar grounds, but further saying that DPAN, in order to exhaust all of his remedies, or all of the avenues for remedy, must also apply to India for citizenship. He has not done so, and the court takes this as a sign of seemingly irresponsibility on DPAN's part, that he has not, he's not taken it upon himself to apply to a country for citizenship, even when the country has already clearly said that he's not a citizen, they don't want him, and he has no connection to. Some of us have speculated on the campaign that maybe they're inferring that he should apply to every country in the world before all of his avenues of remedy have been exhausted. And then in 2016, in January 2016, just last month, DPAN had, the campaign and his legal team had applied to the Supreme Court for leave to appeal, and that leave to appeal was rejected. So the Supreme Court declined to hear the case. That's something the Supreme Court can do. They do not have to give any evidence or reasons why they do not hear a case. They just don't do it. Usually, they think it is not of significant national importance to a great number of people. Unfortunately, one of the reasons that DPAN is not here today is that DPAN was arrested again in December 2015, 3 months ago. He was arrested in Gatineau for some drug trafficking charges, and he's being held in prison now today, and that is why he's not here. One does not have to extend their imagination so greatly as to understand why maybe DPAN was arrested for those things. In December, someone who's been denied the right to work, to live alone, to access health care, to live a normal, meaningful life with any meaningful relationships. He has no income and no ability to live as a regular human being. Now, maybe we should hear the clip, and then I'll just have a few remarks before we wrap up.
Conference would be complete without technical difficulties.
Maybe I'll keep talking, and then maybe the clip will just come on quickly, so that we can make good use of our 20 minutes. So just two things that I would leave, or that I think are important to consider in the context of DPAN's case. Two things. First is, this is the question about why is this happening and how do we understand this happening to Deepan Bhulakati. The first thing is the question of law and politics. This is, Deepan again was approached by CBSA in 2010 and received this news in 2010. This is at the same time as the former Harper Conservative government was what is this word? Anyways, I've lost the word. Was coming to Parliament reporting regularly on the number of criminals, convicted criminals that they had deported. So there was a clear campaign happening under the Conservative government, which is, is technically legal and all of that. But this was a part of a political campaign to deport as many criminals as possible. This was a sign, of course, of good governing under the Conservative government, and many other governments before that. So why is this happening? Well, I guess some of us suspect that there was a concerted effort in this regard to, whether formal and both formal and informal, to round up people who had questionable citizenship status, who had a criminal record. The second thing is to think about this case in the context of something that people have called the crime-immigration nexus, or what Juliet Stumpf called crimmigration. This is the collapse and conflation of both immigration law and citizenship law, which we see happening both arguably in this case and also in things like security certificates, which are also something used in Canada. And what happens in this context is that instead of using criminal law for criminal purposes and allowing people to finish serving their terms, face charges and a trial, we're locking people up and holding them in detention centers using immigration law. Abdelmalek Sayed, who's a French sociologist, has a nice way of talking about this, because I think the crimmigration element can't be taken just out of context. The people we see most subject to crimmigration, this conflation, are often brown men with connections, either that they themselves are Muslim or they have some kinds of connections to Muslim majority countries. And Abdel Sayed likes to talk about, he talks about this status of being an immigrant, being a non-citizen. He says presents a situational form of delinquency or an initial sin, so that when that person is charged with a crime, the social perception is that they're not committing one but two crimes, and that they therefore must be doubly punished. And so I'll just leave that with you. Do we get the clip?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll leave that with you while we hear the clip.
We're going to do an Argentinian arrangement.
I love it.
Immigration, and you have a high-profile case, and losing the job because I don't have a work permit, because the work permit's either 6 months or a year, and then I wait another 4 or 5 months, or I have to go file a mandated application in federal court to get the board to give me a work permit, or I lose a permit, going back and forth. That's one big obstacle.
What about health insurance?
Yeah,
Coverage?
no healthcare coverage whatsoever. An average individual can go into a clinic to get checked for STDs or anything like that. I can't even do that because I'm not classified as a citizen and I got no healthcare coverage, period.
What are the little things you cannot do?
Little things.
Mm-hmm.
I have restrictions, like I can't travel anywhere in Ottawa, anywhere in Canada. I wasn't able to leave anywhere in Ottawa for the longest period of time.
Where is your file now?
Pardon me?
Where is your file now?
What do you mean?
Okay, in what stage you are now? Appealing or?
Well, we filed for seeking the Supreme Court in Canada. We got rejected. And now we're in the process of waiting for the United Nations to come back with their decision. And
Okay.
process of filing an application to the minister.
Okay. How does this make you feel?
I'm a classified as a citizen. I'm basically a dog. I was born and raised in Canada. raised by the state, living in cohorts, and I get in trouble with law, and then poof, out of a sudden, there's one guard went out of the way. Now I'm classified as being stateless in Canada, even though I'm born and raised and never lived anywhere else in the world but Canada, in Ottawa, capital city. I don't feel good about it at all.
What do you want to say to all of us?
Pardon?
To the people that are at the conference or the summit, what do you want to tell to all of them?
Essentially, I want to say that being stateless in Canada is extremely difficult, and people don't realize how many people that are actually stateless in Canada, and the fact that Canada has signed agreement, reduction of statelessness, and Canada should be inducing people to not become stateless. Canada should be helping people not to become stateless. And I always say that people that are stateless, or people that are deal with similar situations, never to give up. The day that you give up fighting for yourself, you're basically giving up for everyone else that's also fighting. So I would always encourage people that are going through this not to ever give up. And if people that are trying to support, it's always good to get support. That's the support that gives the person the ability to keep on fighting.
What are your goals after citizenship?
My goals in life after citizenship?
Yes.
Well, I don't actually have any goals right now, based on the fact that I don't think this is going to be done for me anytime soon. The matter that I'm going through now has been only going on since 2009, so it's been 7 years already, and I don't think this will be anytime soon. So I think this is going to be going for another 5 to 10 years. So I don't really look to that battle. I look to just step by step now, what's the next step of my life, what's the next step of my life, what's the next step of my life, because as a normal person, you'd be able to have goals for far down the road, but as an individual that has no citizenship and no status in Canada, it's kind of hard to have goals when you have immigration and you have police at any given time pull you back into jail because you're in their control.
Okay, that's all the questions we have for now.
Great, thanks.
Good morning, everyone. My father gave me the name Mosaic John. He was First Nation. My mother, Caucasian Canadian, named me Donovan McLaughlin. For 61 years of my life, I was stateless. 9 months ago, I received my official status as a Canadian citizen. When Jocelyn asked me to speak here today, I was at a loss. What do I say to you? How do I explain to you what it is like to be stateless? How do I describe the darkness and the fear, the frustration and the anger that surround you daily? Do I try to describe you the feeling of being worth less than a dog? Because literally, stateless people are worth less than a dog in Canada. Do I tell you about the suffering that my children have had to endure because I have no status? Do I tell you about my 7-year-old daughter coming to me crying, "Daddy, it's no fair. No one will help us. I don't want you to die." I was in heart failure at the time and had no access to health care. Prior to obtaining my citizenship, my anger and frustration would have had me pointing fingers and laying blame here today. Instead, I want us to move forward.